Welcome in to another episode of my Dynasty Fantasy Football YouTube. Today, I'm breaking down players that will break out in 2024. Make sure to like, comment, and most importantly, subscribe if you haven't. 60% of people viewing the channel aren't subscribed. Let's change that today. But here's our first player, Kyle Pitts. So, I know we're all sick of Kyle Pitts not delivering, but I do think this is the year that he breaks out, at least to some degree. Let's look at his previous career. In 2021, he had 68 catches, 1,026 yards, a touchdown on 110 targets, 4 catches and 60.4 yards a game, 10.4 fantasy points per game. Pretty good for a rookie. But I just think because he didn't score that many touchdowns, it didn't deliver like people wanted, but it's one of the best rookie tight end seasons of all time. Then in 2022, just 28 catches, 356 yards, 2 touchdowns on 59 targets, really inefficient. 2.8 catches and 35.6 yards a game, 7.6 fantasy points per game, just didn't really do anything. And then last year, 53 catches, 667 yards, 3 touchdowns, 90 targets, 3.1 catches and 39.2 yards a game, 8.1 fantasy points per game. It's a little bit better, but not all that much better. There were some injury struggles over the last 2 years. And then struggles with Arthur Smith. But why do I think Kyle Pitts will break out? Great question. So he's got a new head coach in Raheem Morris, new offensive coordinator in Zach Robinson, a new quarterback in Kirk Cousins. So it's all changed from last year. And I believe he's now fully healthy from that MCL injury. Now, I also have a few other things. One, Pitts had over 1,000 air yards in 2023. Number 1 among tight ends in unrealized air yards. But just 64% of his catches were, 64% of his targets were catchable. Not good. So I think things are going to improve next year. And I do think he's a player on the edge of a breakout. Next up, we have Chris Olave. Now, Chris Olave has been good over the last 2 years. But again, I think he's been better than we expected, but hasn't quite taken that next step up until the elite or really great tier. In 2022 as a rookie, 72 catches, 1,042 yards, 4 touchdowns on 119 targets, 4.8 catches and 69.5 yards a game, 13.2 fantasy points per game. And then 2023 just kind of stepped it up a little bit in all categories. There were a couple of games missed, but he still had better overall numbers. 5.4 catches and 70.2 yards a game, 14.5 fantasy points per game. So solid season. Why do I think Chris Olave is going to break out? Well, I think the Saints' entire offense is going to change under their new offensive coordinator, Clint Kubiak, who replaces Pete Carmichael, who was, kind of a joke. The offense was a mess in 2023. They barely used any motion. They didn't do anything creative at all. And then on top of that, the Saints also failed to add any receiving weapons to complement Olave and Rashid Shaheed. Michael Thomas is gone. Didn't add anything at receiver. Didn't add anything at tight end. So I'm very confident that Chris Olave is going to give us a little bit more. Plus also, he has 9 career touchdowns on 257 targets. That is not the right side of touchdown regression. So I think there's nothing wrong with Chris Olave in terms of scoring touchdowns. It's not like he can't do it. So I do think he's someone in line for a potential positive touchdown regression going into 2024. Now, if you like my YouTube content, you should sign up for the Patreon. You get my rankings, access to the Discord, and the ability to ask in advance questions for the YouTube videos. Tiers begin at just $6 a month, so I like to keep it affordable. And I pride myself on being an independent voice on this YouTube channel, but independent voices require independent monetary support to exist. And additionally, on the Patreon, you can purchase a YouTube roster review. It's a new thing only for patrons where I do a video breaking down your Dynasty team. So join the Patreon so you can get in on that. Now, we're moving into our third breakout player, James Cook. So let's take a look at the first 2 years of James Cook's career. So 2022 didn't really get that much work. 89 carries, 507 yards, 2 touchdowns, 5.7 yards a carry, which is excellent efficiency. But he stayed behind Devin Singletary, 21 catches, 180 yards and touchdowns, 6.3 fantasy points per game. He was backup. Then in 2023, he broke out. 237 carries, 1,122 yards, just 2 rushing touchdowns, 4.7 yards a carry, and 44 catches, 445 yards, and 4 touchdowns through the air, 13.7 fantasy points per game. Now, why do I think James Cook will break out? There was a big difference when the Bills went from Ken Dorsey as offense coordinator to Joe Brady. Additionally, there's weak backfield competition and less receiving targets and emphasis on the running game. With Stephon Diggs gone, they're going to run the ball even more. Let's take a look. Under Ken Dorsey, Cook averaged 12 carries, 61.5 yards, and 2.4 catches and 22.2 yards per game. Under Joe Brady, we had 16.7 carries, 72.4 yards, 2.9 catches, and 31.9 receiving yards a game. So he was better under Joe Brady. More work, more catches. In the both playoff games, he had 18 carries and 4 catches, so 22 touches in both of them. Additionally, touchdown regression has to come in for Cook. I know Josh Allen is used at the goal line, but it's not realistic to have 237 carries and 2 touchdowns. That's not going to happen again. And additionally, I think Ray Davis is overhyped. I'm not thinking that Ray Davis is going to come in and compete with James Cook to be the starter. So, yeah, that's something I definitely think is overrated. Our final breakout player, Trey McBride. Now, of course, Trey McBride was already good, but let's take a look at his past, and you'll see why I'm picking him as a breakout player. 29 catches, 265 yards, and touchdown on 39 targets, 1.8 catches, 16.6 yards a game, 5.1 fantasy points per game. So essentially, as a rookie, he did nothing. And then last year, 81 catches, 825 yards, 3 touchdowns, 106 targets, 4.8 catches, and 48.5 yards a game, 10.7 fantasy points per game. Now, why am I considering Trey McBride a breakout? He was already good last year, right? Well, this is the first year that he's the starter from the jump. He finished 2023 on a tear, but he wasn't a superstar the whole year. Additionally, Kyler Murray is now fully healthy, so I think the offense is going to take a step forward. If you just look at the time where McBride was the starter, he averaged 6.6 catches and 65.5 yards a game, which is good for 112 catches and 1,114 yards over a 17-game season. So if you compare that to this, it is a very big difference. If you had 30 extra catches and almost 300 extra yards, that would put McBride firmly in the top tier of tight end. So when I say a breakout, I just mean that I still think that people who aren't paying as much attention don't consider McBride in that like stud tier. And I think he does belong there. So that's why I would call McBride a breakout. I always like to cover some news on here. So we have the Rhamondre Stevenson extension dropped yesterday. 4 years, $36 million, up to $48 million with incentives, most of which he won't earn. $17 million guaranteed. So the deal probably locks him down through 2025 at least, with probably a bit of guarantees in 2027, 2026. 2027 and 2028 are probably team options, basically. They're mostly just funny money. Now, I moved Stevenson up just one spot in my Dynasty rankings from RB18 to RB17. It's hard. How highly am I going to value Stevenson? He's already 26 years old. He's older than people think. I don't think Rhamondre Stevenson is ever going to be a top 5 running back in any season ever. So the ceiling is probably RB 8 to 10 in a redraft sense. So if that's the ceiling, and he's already 26 years old, how highly am I going to rank him? It's hard. So I'm more of a seller than a buyer at what I expect the new cost to be. And I would take a first for Stevenson in any format, even if it's 2026, because I think now is a good time to sell. But I do love seeing players get paid. So congratulations to Rhamondre Stevenson on getting his money. As I mentioned earlier, we always take questions from the patrons. So I have a few of them. So let's jump into that. Worst trade you've made in recent memory. So we know that you two are human and make mistakes. Well, first of all, that's fake news. I'm not human. I don't make mistakes. But no, I'm kidding. Of course I do. But yeah, I have a couple of these. Some of these are really bad. This is the worst one. I thought I needed to clear roster space before the start of last season. So I traded Kyron Williams and Rico Dowdle for a 24 fourth. Whoopsie. That's a bad one. Yeah, that's probably the worst trade I've ever made. That's really bad. Also dealt George Pickens and a 24 second for Christian Watson before last season started. Not as bad, but yeah, there's not much redeeming quality about that one. So yeah, I make mistakes too. Yeah, there's not much else to say about that. Worst teams in the NFL going into the 2024 season. Patriots are up there. I just think the Patriots are in a rebuild situation. I don't think they're going to be very good. This is not a playoff year for them. The Giants, as a Giants fan, I really just don't see optimism. I feel like they're stuck between two eras. You know, they have an older quarterback. They brought in some young players. The coaching staff is kind of, I'm not optimistic. I think the Giants are going to be really bad and everyone's going to be gone. Quarterback's going to be gone. Coach is gone. A lot of players will be gone. The Broncos, I think, accepted that this is a rebuilding cap management year to take the high cap hit from Russell Wilson. I don't see how the Broncos are good this year. And then the other two teams I think people think will be really bad are the Panthers and the Raiders. I have more hope for the Panthers than the other teams we've talked about. And the Raiders, to me, I don't think the Raiders are going to be horrible, but I don't think they're going to be good. So it's kind of where you don't want to be. They have no quarterback. They're not going to be at the top or the bottom. They're kind of in limbo. I'm not really sure what their plan is. So, yeah. But yeah, the Giants, Broncos, and Patriots are the three for me that I think are the worst. Less dynasty related and more of a general fantasy football question. How much do you factor in perceived matchups early on in the regular season? Well, for start sit, they're everything. And you'll see that in the weekly start sit ranks. And you have to sign up for the Patreon to get those. It's the only place where we're going to do start sit. I might do start sit videos, not answering them in the YouTube comments, but videos on the channel. I might do that. I didn't go so well last year. I'm going to consider it this year to see if I can find a way to do it. What I won't be doing is answering start sit questions on Twitter or on here. That's not going to happen. So, yes, very important for that, for start sit. As for redraft, yeah, I factored it in. I haven't really gotten to the redraft portion of my content yet to focus on that at all. So I haven't even looked at the early season schedule, if I'm being honest. I'm still in dynasty mode. So, yeah, that's kind of my answer to that. And, you know, more on that. Are they still valuable? They're crucial in playoffs. How big of a sample do you need? That's actually kind of a good other point to it. Once I see a few games, I start like readjusting my opinions of teams. But that kind of depends on the team. Who's a higher draft pick that's getting camp hype that won't pan out? I don't see the path for Ricky Pearsall to do much year one, even though he's doing well at camp. He's more blocked than JSN was year one and not nearly the same caliber of player. And also Adonai Mitchell. Where are the targets? Where are the targets? Anthony Richardson is not going to throw that much. Michael Pittman is the one. Josh Downs is not going away. How is Adonai Mitchell going to be fantasy relevant? Some people say he will be. I cannot see that. So those are the two for me. Now, if you like the video, make sure to drop a like and leave a comment with your thoughts. As always, the best way to support the channel is to subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notifications bell so you can be notified about all my exciting content as it drops. Of course, if you want my best fantasy football advice, it's available on the Patreon. Dynasty redraft, rookie, start sit, and everything else. Every sign up helps support my independent content, most namely this YouTube channel. But once again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all